Hasan Minhaj. You host the Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj,
Yes.
and you just won the Peabody Award. So, first of all, what was that experience like? Getting the nomination first, and then getting the win and accepting that.
It was so cool, especially for this show to be recognized, especially because we are a news-driven comedy show, and to be honored with other amazing journalists and investigative reporters, it was really cool to be in the same conversation as them. And to win was just amazing. And I remember, when we told the staff here that we got nominated, everyone was so excited, and it was just a testament to all the hard work that we've put in this past year.
And being a news-driven comedy show, obviously a lot of research is involved in the show, a lot of information, a lot of screens and data. How do you balance that sort of informative goal and drive of the show with also obviously the humor that?
Yeah, I mean, we track these stories for months. And so, a lot of what we do on the show is we initially sort of put together the book report of what the world is of what we're going to cover, whether it's student loans or drug pricing. And then as we get closer to filming the episode, we sort of infuse it with the comedy soul. But it starts initially with the pitch, and that, getting the pitch, the take, and the research book and the script together is probably the hardest part, because you're distilling a ton of information into 20 some odd minutes. And then you sort of lace the jokes at the end. Believe it or not, the jokes come at the end, and they're kind of the easier part of the equation. The toughest part is making the editorial decision on what story we're going to do, why we're telling that specific story, and what is the comedic take that sort of packages the entire story. Once you lock that in, then sort of putting the jokes, it's just kind of like frosting at the very end of the entire process.
Have there been, because there are a lot of subjects that are incredibly, emotional or heated, intensely political, obviously. Has there ever been a topic that you've
like sneakers?
Looked at?
Sneakers is very political.
Yeah, I mean, they can be.
Right. We found a way to make something non-political political.
Yeah. Is there ever a topic where you're conceiving of it and you think the funny, there's no funny there, you can't, or you can't find the humor in that particular topic, or it wouldn't work necessarily?
Well, what's interesting? People always have asked me that question. Is there any topic that's off limits, or is there any subject politically that you can't talk about? I actually think comedy in and of itself as a genre is built on tension and pressure. So if you think about anything that makes a great joke is you're building pressure through your premise, and then you're cutting it with a punchline. A lot of the subjects that we're talking about are really tense. There's a ton of pressure in student loans. There's a ton of pressure in drug pricing and price gouging through the pharmaceutical industry. So I actually think the tougher the subject is, the more potential there is to sort of cut that pressure with a joke. Now, the test we have as comedy writers and performers is, can we find the right punchline to release all this tension?
And, it's on Netflix, streaming. It's so unlike a show that airs once a week or once a night. You come out in like sort of 6 or 7 episode batches.
Weekly, though. We come out weekly.
Weekly, yes. But in those batches.
But we drop almost like a podcast season.
Yeah.
Where we'll come out every Sunday in 6 to 8 consecutive weeks. And then, we'll roll out our episodes like that. And then we sort of reload and write for the next cycle.
How does that affect, sort of the way you choose topics? So, you kind of going for things that are timely, but also things that might be more evergreen, because like the Saudi Arabia episode, you can go back and watch that and it's still relevant. Does that balance something that comes into it?
So instead of getting caught up, one of the big mission statements that I had going into the show is, instead of getting caught up in the day-to-day tweets and the gaffes and the sort of minutia of everything that's happening in the news, we try to look at larger trends and forces that are happening around the world, and we try to connect the dots. So what are a series of trends that we see that are happening in the current election process that we can talk about from a whole, from 30,000 feet? So that's why we'll take something and come up with a piece on, say, the census, or we'll come up with a piece on, say, redlining, or we'll come up with a piece on student loan debt. What are a bunch of things that are happening that are indicative of a larger problem? That way it feels timely and timeless. So an episode like Affirmative Action has been around for a very long time in America. It's very deeply entrenched in the meritocracy conversation that we have in this country. But it's incredibly topical because right now everything that's happening with the Aunt Becky college admission scandal to the Harvard lawsuit that's happening with the Asian American students suing Harvard. It's finding that right balance. So even something as topical as Supreme is tied to something that's timeless, like hype culture. That's existed since Beanie Babies or Tokumi Elmos or Fabergé eggs. So it's finding that right story. That's what is this indicative of on a larger level.
And when going into one of these batches of 6 or 7 episodes, like what's the process of like writing or choosing topics, and then is everything written and then you shoot 6 shows, or is it more of like a one at a time sort of thing? What's that kind of creative process?
Well, because the show is so graphics heavy, like creating all of this, every show looks uniquely different. So we have to measure twice and cut once. So there's a lot that goes into the actual green light process. If we're going to press go on a topic, we've really vetted it. Like, we've really thought about it. Our research work is done. We've had multiple iterations of the script already edited and sort of put together. So we generally like to pick topics that I think, we look forward to, that we're saying, okay, where is this? Where are the trends and forces heading? What is something that we can comment on that's coming up? And also, what is the white space of stuff that's been talked about in the news but hasn't been talked about on the news comedy shows? So anytime you look at the front page of the New York Times, sure, there'll be stuff that's America-centric in the far right corner. But then there's 6 other panels of stuff that's happening all around the world that's incredibly important, but just a lot of the shows don't have the time or the distribution to get into why you should care about what's happening in Venezuela, or why you should care about what's happening in Sudan, or why you should care about what's happening in parts of the Middle East or Africa. These are things that we have the ability to talk about because there is no limitation on the amount of time we can dedicate to each episode, and we're in 190 countries. So one of the things that I really try to focus on is, hey, news in America is a very myopic thing. We think it's very Trump-centric, but global news is so much bigger than just what's happening in the States.
And the news cycle feels so short these days. Things happen on top of things, on top of things, on top of tweets.
Right.
Going into an episode...
But don't you think it speaks to... Sure, things are happening really fast, but I think the thematic undertones of each of those headlines, those are pretty timeless.
Oh, I agree, yeah. But are there any ever developments that sort of make you have to revise something on the fly, or,
Sure.
This larger story, this little piece of it sort of landed on a particular day? Have there ever been moments like that?
Totally. So there'll be stuff where something will happen in real time, like with our Saudi Arabia story. It was a long lead story that we were tracking for a long time. Then the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi put everything into hyperdrive. Another example is the episode that we had with Brazil Bolsonaro in the rainforest. We had this huge piece on Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro. He was set to speak here in New York. Then all of a sudden that event got canceled. We had written this whole thing, this bit, written around him coming to New York. That gets canceled on the fly. We then also, at the same time, were tracking a story about the Philippine midterm elections. So Bolsonaro drops out. We sort of truncate our Brazil piece a little bit, and then we insert a Philippines midterm election piece that same week. So stuff like that will happen, but the core, the essence of what we want to talk about remains the same. But I find it exciting, man. Like those sort of relevant, hey, this is happening right now. I love that stuff. It gives the show relevance.
Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of topical comedy shows on these days. The format of this one is unique, or at least the setup. It feels very much almost like a stand-up special.
Why do you say that?
Because you're literally standing up, and but it has some of the same energy. Addressing the audience sometimes directly, and it feels in that way a little bit like more hybrid of stand-up and this sort of topical news. Like, what's that feeling on the stage when you're kind of, juggling what's on the screens and sort of interacting with the audience? Like, what went into, going for that particular aesthetic?
I just wanted to do that. That was done by design. One of the things that a lot of these shows lock you into is you're really confined by just camera one. So I look here, I'm right here, there's just an over-the-shoulder graphic, and there's a fake city skyline behind me. You rinse, wash, repeat. I, was really inspired by the fact that if we have LEDs around me and it's sort of 360 degrees to my right, to my left, on top of me, even literally I'm standing on an LED, what if the entire show itself became a set that can change literally every second? So I'm performing and I'm explaining exposition, and the stage itself is almost like Jarvis. I'm communicating and playing maestro to clips, graphs, SOTs, tear-outs, all of those things. Then another thing that I wanted to do is I also felt like it was very confining to be, looking at the camera and saying, "Hi, I'm Hasan Minhaj, and this is the television show," when you're performing in front of 200 people. So I just like the ability to sort of break things out, to deliver deliver information to people at home, and then also kind of break the fourth wall and be like, I know you're here, and this is insane that this is happening, so I'm going to direct this to you. And so to really make the show feel like, oh, I'm at this live taping. I went to this live performance. Hasan performed this deep dive on Amazon and, drug pricing. Like, I saw that live, and they were able to capture that really authentically.
And having that kind of interaction with the audience, I mean, you have digital exclusive like deep cuts, you take questions from the audience.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the audience sort of is a part of the show in a way that they're not necessarily in terms of those other, kinds of formats?
Totally. I mean, for me, when I think about this genre, which is sort of late night variety, and we're not even like attached to time because we're on Netflix, like people watch this whenever, people watch it OTT, they watch it on mobile. For me, the defining quality of this genre is it is a host-driven medium. In other words, it's not an ensemble cast. Like, I am the limiting factor of the potential of the show and the reach of the show, and people come to these shows because they want a take or a POV. And so one of the things that I've tried to embrace is, all right, let's lean into that. Like, people are coming for my POV. People come to our tapings because they want to see that live. People subscribe to our YouTube channel. People watch the stuff on Netflix. People interact with me on Twitter and Instagram. Let's just lean into that, into the solo performance, late night variety host genre by directly interacting with them.
And I really do love that point of view aspect of the show, especially in topics like Supreme or,
Right.
The episode about hip hop. I mean, a lot of shows cover a lot of topics, and these were shows that did something rare to me, which is told me something I didn't know about something I didn't know, and, it was just eye-opening. Like, when I saw the title Supreme on Netflix, I thought, oh, he's going to talk about Kavanaugh.
Oh, you thought it was going to be the Supreme
Literally,
Court?
I thought it was a Supreme Court episode. And but I know a lot about that. I've heard a lot about that. A lot of people have covered it. Not a lot of people cover Supreme necessarily in hype culture.
Yeah. Do you know a lot about cricket?
I do not. I did see Vox Explainer on Netflix, so I'm looking forward to...
cricket?
Yeah.
Got it.
So, like, how much of that, if you don't have a personal sort of passion for something, is that something you can't get into it or you avoid?
No, I mean, look, I am not personally attached to the pharmaceutical industry, but to me, it's just about getting passionate about a wide variety of subjects. And so for me, like, I'm passionate about everything from the United States' relationship with Saudi Arabia to the rise of authoritarianism around the world, to sneakers, to streaming music. The connecting point is different in all of those things, but I think people tap into my passion into those things. When we put something out every week, really the two emotions that we're trying to tap into is I want to share stories with people where when they watch the show, they say what you kind of just said. How have I been living my life and not knowing this piece of information? I've just been walking around and I had no idea this is why people line up outside of the Supreme store and this is how they control supply and demand. Or two, oh my God, thank you for talking about that. I felt this way for a long time, but there's no show talking about this topic. There's no show that is taking the time to break down the politics of Brazil or the politics of what's happening right now in India. Thank you. There's billions of people around the world that are waiting for those characters and those stories to be satirized, but because of, whether it's freedom of speech laws or it's just the actual industries in those respective countries, it hasn't been done yet. So I'm excited to be a part of that.
And you've been doing the show for a few months now. As you've had more experience doing it and getting more used to the format, the topics, the interaction with the audience, all that sort of stuff, has there anything, been able to streamline anything, or anything that you felt like that was rough at the beginning that you feel like you've gotten better at, or what have you learned over the course?
I mean, I think what's been really great is you can see the show really finding its groove now. Like, even if you look at early on some of the graphics in the stage design that we had early on, it's evolved and definitely changed and gotten better every episode. Some of these episodes that we've had, the Brazil episode, the Indian elections episode, the things and the swings we're making, it's really ambitious visually. Like, our graphics department is incredible. They are designing a unique stage show every week. It's amazing. I've never seen anything like that before, where every week, every time I jump on stage, the world that's around me is completely different. That is becoming more streamlined. The choices and the swings that we're making are becoming more ambitious. We're playing more with different colors, with depth of field, different sort of comedic runs, larger comedic runs and jokes, with me interacting with the graphic. Those things are really exciting. Also, just the reach of the show. We're now finding that, an audience is willing to go there with me about this specific topic for 26 minutes. All right, what if we picked this country, or what if we picked this autocrat? That would be really exciting to talk about that.
And I thought I'd wrap up. We started with the Peabody Award, but you also won the Webby Award. And this is a show streams on Netflix, so it's already built in sort of web quality to it. And then just interactive media has become so just all encompassing. It's not even interactive media anymore. It's just what media is now.
Right.
So what was it like to win that one, and how did that compare?
That was really cool. It was really fun to win a Webby and get a shiny spring, and I love that the speeches are only 5 words. It's a fast award show.
Is that almost harder than giving an acceptance speech that you can go on and on about? Is a lot of pressure goes into those 5 words?
There was 2 different versions there. So I did the this is going on eBay, but the alt version of the speech, this is just for you guys, Gold Derby, was, wow, I would like to... And that's it.
Well, wow, I would like to... Thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much.